What do you do when your secret life steps out of bounds to ruin your public life? How do you rebound to make it right again? Welcome to another episode of Life Jack, the Resilience Podcast, where remarkable people share their personal stories of adversity and triumph. Today, I have a truly inspiring guest, Coach Randy Brown. Randy's life has been an interesting mixture of family, work, secret lives, music, basketball, and an unwavering pursuit of excellence. With a master's degree from the University of Arizona, Randy built a successful career in coaching college basketball. However, his life took a tragic turn when he suffered the loss of his two young daughters, leading him down a path of addiction and ultimately serving time in federal prison. Despite these challenges, Randy has emerged stronger, dedicating his life to helping others by sharing his story and teaching the valuable lessons he has learned. Join us as we explore Coach Randy's incredible journey of resilience and transformation.
Sometimes life gives us lemons. Sometimes it gives us lemonade. Other times it gives us something entirely out of left field that makes us say, WTF. But no matter what obstacles come, there is most often a way out on the other side, and we are once again victorious. My name is Dr. Rowe, and you are listening to my podcast about resilience. Every guest shares a tragedy to triumph story to give listeners like you the inspiration to push through every single day. Listen now as my next guest shares how they were life-jacked.
Hi, Randy. Welcome. Thank you so much for being a guest on my show. How are you?
Wonderful, Dr. Rowe. It's just excited to be here. Pleasure to be in your company, and have been really excited about being able to share some time with you here.
Ah, that's wonderful. Now, can you start by sharing what initially drew you into a career in coaching college basketball, and what was that experience like for you?
There's nothing like it. I'll tell you, it started when I was a youngster because my father was a sports writer, and so when I would go to work with my dad, we went to the gym, and I got to watch him keep the scorebook and interview players and coaches, and I just understood a lot about the sport and a lot about how important coaches were, how important communication with players, and I saw hundreds of practices before I was probably 10 years old. And so the game itself was kind of second nature to me. And I learned at a pretty young age that you not only could play it when you're a youngster, but somebody had to coach it too. And maybe when I grew older, that I could still be around basketball and be a coach. And that's how kind of it all started. And I chose one profession, and that's what I did. I got very lucky, but I trace it all back to my dad being a sports writer. It was really the impetus of it all.
Now, that's amazing. It's truly a blessing when you are able to pick a career and it's one that you love, because most of us, we kind of stumble upon our careers. We kind of go to college for one thing and end up doing something else. But you know how lucky you are. I mean, how lucky you are that you are able to pick something that you love and enjoy, and that you pick that as a career and you had some success at it. You know, so that's remarkable. Remarkable.
Yeah,
now,
very fortunate.
Yes, for sure. Now, for those who may not know, you have had 12 former players go to the NBA, including 2016's NBA Coach of the Year, Steve Kerr, who currently coaches the Golden State Warriors. Did you see this in him being Coach Steve Kerr? Did you see that in him, that he was going to be this phenomenal, basketball player and then ultimately championship winning coach when he was in college?
Well, I witnessed his sort of coming to be the great college player. He led his team, the Arizona team, the year after I had left Arizona. That 88 team went to the Final Four. And Coach Lute Olson came to the desert from Iowa and took that program over. And in short order, they became very relevant in the national collegiate picture. Steve Kerr was an interesting study as a player. And I'll tell you, he was one of these that you would term coach on the floor. And sometimes we're lucky enough to have one of our players who sees the game close to the way the coach would see the game. And that's invaluable because they're out there in the flow of the game. And the game isn't like practice to where you can just stop it and correct and say, well, think about doing this and think about doing that. It's a free flow, and it's almost frustrating as a coach because you can't have the control you have during practice. But when you have a coach on the floor, he understood the game. He saw things that coaches could see that I'm sure a lot of his teammates couldn't see at the time because they were just playing the game. But he played the game. He also saw the game. We never talked about Steve as being a coach or maybe being a great coach. We just all really just valued what he brought to the program. And, Steve's 6'3", and he's not. I mean, we had 7-footers in the program, and nobody took a back seat to Steve Kerr because when he spoke, they really listened and took him very seriously. So I guess what you could say to answer the question is that I can certainly see now why he is been tremendously successful based on how he saw the game and the kind of player and leader he was in college, without a doubt. Really proud of him.
No, absolutely. And I know he carried that on, to play with the Bulls as well. He just seemed like he was just the teammate, the player that you would want on your team. He was just, the great teammate, with Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. It just seemed like it was really awesome. So, that is phenomenal. And thank you for sharing that with me and the listeners. Now I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about the unimaginable loss. I mean, that is devastating for any parent. And that is the passing of your daughters. Now, how did that tragedy, I mean, if you want to share and go into detail, it's totally up to you. Mm-hmm. But how did that tragedy impact your life and career at that particular time of it happening?
It affected my life personally tremendously. But Dr. Rowe, I have to tell you that I allowed it to impact on a negative, in a negative way. I allowed it to impact me. There isn't a parent who hasn't lost a child whose life has become different, and in some cases, tremendously different. As I try to explain to people, I can best portray it like this. I just felt like part of my soul was ripped out of me. And it was the part of my soul that couldn't be put back in, that nothing could be made whole again. And it's just a feeling like you're just not quite there. How we deal with adversity, which is what I do now with people, is really an interesting study. But when life reaches up and takes something from us, the unimaginable, we're not prepared for it because you don't prepare to lose your children. And more specifically about what happened in the case of our oldest daughter, I was an assistant coach at Miami of Ohio, in Oxford, Ohio, and went to practice the day after her 4th birthday in November of 1992. And just like any other day where she was 4 years old and I went to go, Dad went to practice and he'll be home later. And never got a chance to speak to her again. You don't prepare for that. And so one of the things I really like to talk to people about is preparing, even though it may be hurtful, but I think it's very valuable that we prepare for the inevitability that things are going to happen in our life. Nobody's exempt from things happening, painful things happening, terrible things in our life. We can't. Nobody's exempt from it. We've all faced it. We don't know when it's coming, but I just implore people to just sit and imagine, if they could, something really, really difficult occurring. The phone call in the middle of the night, or someone comes and knocks on the door, and how would they respond? I think it is very good work. I think it's time well used because some things are so difficult that, as we know, people just check out of life. It's too much. It's too heavy. It's something they don't feel like they can deal with. And that doesn't need to be. It really doesn't. I'm so fortunate to be able to be standing on the other side of these adversities and to be able to be on with you and utter these words, actually, because Dr. Rowe, I was really close to one of the statistics. One of the ones who said, I can't do it anymore. There's no way. Now, when it happened with our second daughter, I came as close as I think one could possibly come to making a decision that they didn't want to live on this earth any longer. Those were dark, dark, dark times. But the first time it happened, we didn't know. We had no idea. And just to give you just a little background on it, we still don't know to this day what it was specifically that caused our children. We know it was a rare disease. We know that some things were out of balance for them as they got sick. They weren't able to handle like flu-like symptoms and sickness the way other kids do, and their organs were attacked, and it was a very rapid thing. I mean, it was like in an hour. And so by the time my wife realized something was drastically wrong, she rushed her to our local hospital, which is fairly close, and they came and got me in practice and drove me up to the hospital. And I never got a chance to talk to our oldest, Meredith, again. I talked to her, but I guess I'll never know whether she heard me or not. But I just, in vain, I spoke to her, and I pled with God, please let this message get to my child, because I'm never going to be able to talk to her again and spend the rest of my life with her. And it's just, I can't even, I can't even really, other than there's just this huge hole, just a giant hole. And I know this, though, that if you have any of these three F's, I call it the three F's: your faith, your family, and your friends. If you have any semblance of those three, you have a chance. But if you're within an earshot of listening to this, please don't try to knuckle it up and do it on your own, because this is not something to do on your own. It's not. It's too heavy. There are too many unanswered questions, and I got caught up in the why, and there were no answers to my why, which I found out later in a really pivotal day with my pastor, and that really, really helped me. But just would ask people that if you don't know what to do, take a step back, take a deep breath, and realize that there can be help on the way in a second. Pick up the phone and call someone. And I have found that verbally describing what I'm going through and what has happened really helps me with someone else, because it kind of separates me from that instant pain and just tremendous shock.
Yes.
And to know that you've got someone there, and they don't need to say anything. If they just come and they're within your presence, and they put their arms around you and hug you and tell you how much they love you, and they want to help so bad, and they can't, and it hurts them too, because they just see how difficult it is. That I know I've thrown a lot of things at your question, but it is such a, I want to say, once in a lifetime experience. It wasn't for us. It was repetitive, but there is a way through everything. I do believe that, Dr. Rowe. In fact, I believe that adversity comes with a trampoline.
Mm-hmm.
If you decide to use the trampoline, all adversity comes with the chance to continue on with your life. And although things will never be the way they used to be, they can still be great.
Yes.
And I'm a Christian. I truly and honestly and know in my heart of hearts that I'm going to see my girls in heaven. And that is such a relief to me, because I thought when they were gone, they were gone. And physically, they were gone. Today, as a matter of fact, on the day we're taping this with you, is the 27th anniversary of our second daughter passing, Natalie Jean was on February 2nd, and a number of years ago, 1998. So I'm a little raw today,
Yeah,
like I usually am on these. Yeah, yeah. But
No, because I appreciate, you having the courage to share, because not only were you and your wife life jacked once, but through the passing of one of your daughters, but twice through the passing of your second daughter as well. And rest in paradise to Natalie Jean and your older daughter, Meredith, I think is what you said her
Meredith,
name was.
yes. Thank you.
But I can't agree with you more. Faith, family, friends. You've got to have those three F's. I love that you mentioned that, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, I want to kind of go into the next thing is, like you said, you had hit rock bottom and you just were like, I just don't know if I can do this life anymore. And that's understandable. Right. And I know that there have been several listeners out there that have also felt the same way. But then you ended up spending 2 years in prison. So how did that transpire?
Well, I had mentioned earlier that we all have choices, and when our second daughter left us quickly on the 2nd of February in 1998, I saw nothing but darkness, and I remember going to bed and hoping that I could sleep, and never wanting to wake up. And when I did wake up, I remember thinking, what am I going to do? My life was so listless, so void of anything that would motivate me to, whether it be talk to someone, I mean, even my wife, or get something to eat for breakfast, there was nothing on my to-do list, nothing. Life just turned into a long, just an unbelievable existence. And what I did is, there are a lot of ways to grieve, and I subscribe to and would encourage everyone to read about grief. And there are 6 stages of grief, commonly, that are presented. And I'll tell you, healthy grief will help you get through anything. Now, unhealthy is the path I took, and that was my mistake. So there were 3 things that I leaned on in trying to get through the second death of our children, and that was just anything that would anything that would soothe me, anything that would bring me comfort. I was all about that. Now, I'm working in college basketball, and you can work long days in college basketball, and to me, working an extraordinarily amount of long hours during the day was the medicine for me. It just consumed me because I was so consumed in my job, and it allowed me a place to go and something to do to where I could be engaged with something different than the thought of losing our daughters. And so that was one of my escapes. My second escape was alcohol. And I had been a drinker, but had never leaned on it in this type of way. But believe me, if it brought me a respite for a couple hours of being put in a zone where I felt like, hey, I can relax, and alcohol had a tremendous ability to put me in a place that I felt better, and I didn't have to. And it just wasn't as raw as it normally would have been. Like addictions go, Dr. Rowe, when one wears off and 2 wears off, you go to the next one. And for me, it became pornography. And pornography was a place online where I could go, where nobody judged me. Nobody had anything bad to say. It was a place where I could go and just really be comforted, if you would. Unfortunately, the way, again, addiction goes, when one part of an addiction wears off, you just graduate up to the next level. And for me, it was, it got to the point where it was out of control, and I was in receipt of images that were illegal. and that was my charge. And one day in the basketball office at Iowa State University, 2 federal agents walked into my office and basically spilled the beans and said that they had been investigating me for 2.5 years and that wanted to ask me some questions. And I'll tell you, I was so tired of being 2 people. I mean, so mentally and physically tired of having to. I had to be the coach that was a public figure, but I also, was trying to take care of my life and have this whole comfort bit of me going too. And believe me, it's really difficult to do, and it's so taxing to be 2 people. And I basically said, I'm not going to fight you. I'm tired of it. I want to be done with this. And I knew it'd be the end of my career as soon as I said that. And I was willing to do that because I knew that I was not in a good place. I knew what I'd been doing with pornography was not anything that I condoned. I did it to keep myself going. And don't blame anybody other than myself for deciding to do those things. And the cost of that was unbelievably tremendous. I got, I was removed from college basketball. I was removed from my position, and I had basically had to start life over and try to figure out who in the heck Randy Brown was. So in this story I'm telling, there are a lot of ways that we can handle adversity. One of them is not to react and to respond, which is a little bit more time sensitive. It's more mature. It allows for retrospective self-reflection and allows other people to be involved in your journey of making a comeback. If you don't do it and you do it in silence, it's dangerous as can be, and it is not the way to go. Please, if there's someone who is involved in it, and you'll know who you are when you hear this, I would grab someone that you can trust and say, could I meet with you? And just lay it out and spill the beans. And I'm telling you, there's a physical manifestation when you tell someone for the first time something you've been involved in that you're embarrassed about, that is something that people might judge you about. You lay it out for one person and it can change your life. Because that might be the only person you ever have to tell. And if they can help you and guide you and get you the help you need so that you can start to make better decisions and turn from what it is that you're doing, as we know, there's a lot of different ways to comfort ourselves. You can absolutely do the right thing, and it can make all the difference in the world. I just chose not to.
Right. Well, I just definitely want to appreciate you for being vulnerable on the show today and sharing your story. Because sometimes I think people come on the show and they share there's minor setbacks, right? And then they push through them. Yeah. But yours was a very significant setback. And it just shows, of course, look at you now, and we'll, talk about that. But I just want listeners to know that even when you have the most devastating setback, that is self-induced, like you bring it on yourself and you basically have life jacked yourself, that there still is a way for you to come back. There's still a way for you to, as you say in some of your talks, you're able to rebound. So I want to ask you.
Absolutely.
What was your turning point that began your journey towards recovery? Because you could have gone to prison after that, and you could have, like you said, you could have been like, you know what, I lay myself down, I quit. I don't want to do anything else positive. I just want to just be here and just waste away until God takes me home, like you said, and then I'm done. Yeah. But no, you chose to fight back really against yourself, right? You said you have this secret part of you, but you chose to say, you know what, I'm going to fight back and I am going to put this person away for good, and they're never going to see the light of day again. So what was the turning point that began that journey towards recovery and really reinvention? Because, Coach, you have reinvented yourself. It's almost like you had this huge injury, right? And then you've come back, right? You reinvented yourself and come back renewed. Right. So what was your turning point?
There were a couple. And I will say that I didn't have an answer when I got back from prison, I didn't have an answer because I couldn't find this guy, Randy Brown. And if I could find him, he wouldn't really mean much to me because he really didn't represent anything. There was something powerful that happened that I realized that it as much as it is a tremendous thing to be called coach. When you're no longer the coach, you're no longer called coach. And if they're not going to call me coach, what are they going to call me? And I felt a duty to my family, certainly a duty to my wife, who was unbelievably supportive during all of this. If you can even imagine that, she was. And I knew that I had a duty to my family. I still had two beautiful daughters to help raise, but it went deeper than that. It went deeper than that. I had a very impactful meeting with our senior pastor at Christ Community Church in Ames, Iowa, David Staff, who I consider one of my real true friends, not just because he's a senior pastor, because I know him on a very personal level as a man. And I went to him one day, Dr. Rowe, and I said, I can't do this. I go, this is too hard. I still want to be that coach, and I want this and I want that. And I said, I'm so riddled with the question why I can't move forward. And part of this turning point was his answer, and it was so beautiful. He said, he goes, you have to, and I held his hand. He had me hold his hand. He goes, look me in the eye. He goes, I want you to believe me like you've never believed anything in your life. He said, as human beings, we are not created to have all of the answers. It wasn't part of our creation. There are things that we won't learn, even though we want answers to on this side of things. But I can tell you that you will find out and you will get your answer. And I didn't understand why there had to be so much pain in life. Like what was the purpose of all the pain? Well, I've come to learn that what David Staff told me that day was exactly the truth. And I became light as a feather. I remember walking out of there, I could almost just fly. I felt that burden of having to find an answer to all those questions didn't exist because we weren't created to know what those answers are. That was a huge turning point. And I would say kind of a third part of the turning point was just to be surrounded by so many people who had not judged me for what I did. They knew me by what they knew about me. And some of these are people I grew up with in my hometown of Fort Dodge, Iowa for many, many years. Some I met along the way in life, and they were just people that were there. They were in support of me. They knew me, and they knew how much I still had to give to life and give to others. And many of those said, and really got me to think about that what we have been through can give us the opportunity to use that very same pain and those very same experiences to help others in the same situation. And I remember the light switch kind of going on, thinking, wow, that is, so instead of looking at it like pain, and I can look at it like I can actually use my experiences and the hand I've been dealt, because adversity comes with a trampoline, and I can use this to actually maybe help other people before they make decisions that they shouldn't make in the throes of adversity. And that meant a lot to me because I felt like that became a calling for me. And I decided to rebound, not only rebound, but rebound forward, which to me is the only way to go about it. So I know that's a long answer, but it wasn't one particular thing. It was kind of woven. It was woven together with those three separate situations, but it was powerful.
No, that was remarkable. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I do agree with you. You know, what your pastor said is that you just have to believe. And like you said, it's a faith. And I just, I think that back then athletes, I'm a former athlete, and you just have to believe. Like, you don't know how you're going to do it. You don't know how it's going to happen, but you have to have the belief in yourself, and you have to have the belief in your team and your abilities. And I think that's definitely what you're saying. No matter how big the setback, you can come back, but
Right.
you have to believe
Right.
that you can. Like, I love that,
Right.
Randy. Like, you just have to. I guess it's believe or bust, pretty much.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
And I like that word believe. And you know what? A lot of people, they make a decision that they're going to come back. And it's kind of like, that joke where they say, there's three frogs on a log, and one decides that he's going to jump in. How many are left? Well, there's still three left because he decided he was going to jump in. He just hasn't jumped yet. And so then there's the follow-up, and there's the commitment. There's the things you have to do every day, because we can all, everybody wants to lose a few pounds, right? I always like talking about that. Oh, yeah, who doesn't want to do that? And people will say, oh, yeah, I want to do that. I want to do that. I'm going to do that. But you don't see them at the gym. And so there's that next huge step in anything we say that we want or we're going to do, is committing to it, and then those action steps, which will lead us to, like you said, as athletes who need to make a comeback. You can't just haphazardly get up in the morning and say, yeah, hope it works out. No, you have to have a plan and stick with your plan.
No, absolutely. Now, you have this metaphor, and you've mentioned that this metaphor that you have is that the concept of a quilt being created throughout our lives. So what exactly does this metaphor mean, and how has it shaped your perspective on adversity?
Wow. Well, I'm so glad you asked this question. I really always love talking about the quilt. And I remember reading this somewhere, and when I sat down and wrote my book, this was one of the things that just kept gnawing at me, like, I want to make sure that there's a place for this. And so if you can imagine a quilt being made, and in life, when we're going through things, we are only allowed to be on the back of the quilt. So let's say that a quilt is hung up in a room, and there's room behind the quilt, and there's room in front of the quilt. And the people making the quilt, okay, we're not allowed on that side. We're only on the back side. And I'm sure everybody's seen the back of a quilt. This is where all of the strands or all of the thread comes out, and all of the yarn. And this is where they tie them off into knots when they're done with it on the other side. This is where the kind of ugly, it looks like an ugly, unorganized mess of things.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. And in life, when things happen to us, or we evaluate our role in life, I'm big on the word perspective, who you are and who you are in this world. When we look at the back of the quilt, we say, that's my life. Yuck. That stinks. I don't like that. I don't like that. Why did these things have to happen? God, what are you doing to me? If you're such a wonderful God, why do you allow these things that are so painful to happen? And that's the conversation that goes on behind the quilt. But the unbelievably uplifting thing to me is it's God on the other side of the quilt. And we are at some point going to be able to walk around that quilt and look at the astonishing beauty, thought, and just magnificent artwork that has been created all of this time, and we didn't even know it because we could only see the back of the quilt. And at that moment where we get to see what has been created, actually, we will understand why so many things that happened during our life had to happen. And God doesn't make any mistakes. I mean, He knows what he's doing with every little needle point stitch. It's part of a giant creation, and everybody has one. Everybody has a quilt. And if all we do, though, is focus on the back of that quilt, that's why I want everybody to know that there's another side that you're going to see of your quilt. And it's going to be beautiful. I can't wait. It's going to be awesome. And there's going to be answers. And that's going to be cool, too, because I'm going to be able to get some of these answers. And do you know what, Dr. Rowe, the great thing about the answers is they're going to make sense.
Yeah.
It won't be like, point, counterpoint, back and forth. It won't be one of those. It won't have to, because it'll make beautiful sense. And I'll say, oh my gosh, why did I not believe, God, you when I went through all this? Because I knew, and that's Romans 8:28, for those that believe that the things that are being done in life are being done for good. Now, that's really hard to take when you're in the throes of pain and can't understand what's going on in your life. But that verse right there, Romans 8:28, is about the quilt. And man, I can't wait to see mine. It's going to be awesome.
I love that. And I love that metaphor that you use, because, the outside world, right? People looking at us, they just see the beautiful side of our quilt, right? And they're like, oh, you've got it all together. They're looking at us and you've got it all together, not knowing that behind the quilt is all of these different avenues and crossroads and tragedies and missed stitches that people just don't know. But you're right. I mean, through the faith of God and how God protects us, He puts His arm around us, Randy. He really, really does.
Yes.
Even through the times that we are not making the best of choices. But again, if you have that faith, He doesn't allow you to stray too far. He doesn't allow you to stray too far. I can say that. And He can help you find your way back. Now, there's 3 F's that you mentioned earlier that I want to talk about, and that's the faith, family, and friends. And that you said that they played a big role in your recovery. So,
oh boy,
yeah. So, can you share, what exactly did these 3 F's? What did they do for you during your darkest moment? What made faith, family, these particular things? What made those things special for you?
Well, I can begin to answer that by telling you this. When you think that God is somewhere else, if you think He's hiding, if you think He doesn't want to spend time with you, if you think He's not interested, you're wrong. If you think your family would not do anything for you, anything, then that's a mistake. And your friends, those who truly know you, deeply know you, will always be there. And so the first thing about the 3 F's is they've always been there, they'll always be there, and they're there right now. And we deceive ourselves by thinking, no, nobody's going to want to be my friend. People are going to run away from me in my life, and my family's going to look down on me. And who knows where God was, because God didn't help when I was going through my most difficult times. And we put ourselves on an island, and all of a sudden it's us sitting on an island all by ourselves. And that's never, ever the case. So I had to, and it came from talking to a lot of friends, my family, but a lot of friends too, who would get on the phone with me, and we would talk. And these aren't people that just say, hey, if you need something, just call me. It was like, if you need something and you need me to be there tomorrow morning, I will be there tomorrow morning, which makes them feel like they're right there in that moment. So I think that was probably my biggest takeaway about friends, family, and faith. And, I was angry at God. I will definitely admit that. I was angry at God. I cursed my God. When I was involved in pornography, I had this picture of taking God and putting Him in a room and locking the door so that He couldn't see anything that I was doing. Boy, I was smart, wasn't it? So, yeah. So God was over my shoulder, looking over my shoulder every bit of the way. And so here I thought I was being this tricky guy and trying to have, work it out my way for it to work to but no, those people are always there. But I will say that we do need to, I have a theory that we are the culmination, Dr. Rowe, of everything we have done, said, and thought. Now, unfortunately, when we have a choice, we like to represent ourselves by the good things. And those things that we don't take ownership of end up being inside of us, and they eat away at us. And if you want to truly be free, and if you want to live in a way that will make you feel like you are 100% alive, take account of all of you. Okay, like coaches. And it's easy to talk about the championships and the great things that have happened in your career. No, we don't like to talk about when we got fired from a job or when we lost too many games or this or that. We're the culmination of everything. So why? I mean, just stand up and say, here's who I am. I didn't have to do that, but there's something deep in me that convinced me that if I'm going to do this right, if I'm going to reinvent myself, I'm going to reinvent myself as someone who can openly and honestly talk about everything I've done.
Yeah.
And that ownership is so strong. Oh, you talk about really getting right with yourself. And if you can do that just with one person, Dr. Rowe, it can be one person. It can start there. Believe me, because it isn't like there are sinless people in the world. Okay, we have all sinned. We have done things. We all hide things. But I have a favorite little slogan I like to talk about when we hide things and when we run. Running never works out, because when we run, the person that chases never tires. Now think about that. They never tire. You can run as long as you want, but eventually somebody's going to catch up to you, whatever that might be in your particular situation. And I can't remember if I read that somewhere or just popped in my head one day, but it is so true. You can only run for so long. And we're usually running from ourselves, which is really crazy.
Yep.
So why not just, look in the mirror and say, okay, I'm done running. I did those things. I'm not happy about doing that. I'm embarrassed, but it's part of me, part of what makes me human. And to know all of me is to know all of me. And it's been huge for me. And it's allowed me to rebound forward and do some of the things that I'm able to do. And it's exciting. It's exciting.
Like I said, it's hard to believe, Coach, that our time is up. And, but this has been such a wonderful conversation. But before you go, I have to ask you, because this is the famous question at the end of all of my interviews are, what advice would you give about building resilience to someone who is currently experiencing adversity and struggling to see a way forward, who is devastated just as deep down as you were?
Yes. The very first thing is, whether you believe this or not, begin to create in your mind a situation where this is going to be okay. You are going to make it through to the next day. You're going to make it through to the next year. Pain, like the death of a child, is, I've heard this said many times, is like a scar on your arm. The scar will always be there, but it won't be so sensitive to the touch that it was 2 days after the scar begin to heal on your arm. It'll be years later. The scar will still be there, but it won't hurt like it did. There will be great memories though. That's the first thing. And give yourself some credit, folks, and believe that there is a better life for you, and that your life will benefit somehow from everything that's happened to you. And then the second thing is this: I believe that resilience is like a muscle, and the more we exercise a muscle. So let's say something happens tomorrow and we want to really bail out on ourselves, and we don't. And we stick to it. We do what we know to do. We go to the 3 F's. We begin to work on grief, and we get through that. Do you know how much easier it is the next time when something not that drastic, but something else happens? It's almost like, well, I've exercised that resilience muscle. Yeah. It's in good shape. It knows how to respond, and you get through the next one. Then you get through the next one and the next one. And you don't become invincible, but you become very good at understanding what perspective is and knowing how to deal with things that are very uncomfortable that you don't want to deal with, but that you have to. So that would be and I want everybody to think about that. It's a muscle, and you can either ignore it or you can use it. And if you use it, it will pay off 1,000,000 times over.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. It is definitely a muscle. I can tell you the way that I approach things now in comparison to the way that I approached things when I first started this show in October of 2023, I think about resilience in a totally different way, and I attack life in a totally different way. So I tell you, yes.
That's awesome. That's great to hear.
Yes.
Good for you. It's awesome.
But thank you, Coach Randy Brown, for sharing your incredible journey with us. I mean, your story is a testament to the power of resilience and the impact of turning adversity into an opportunity for growth and empowerment. I
absolutely
truly appreciate your openness and the wisdom that you shared today.
Thank you, Dr. Rowe.
So how can listeners find...
Thank you very much.
Yes, no, of course. Now, how can listeners find and connect with you if they would like to book you for speaking?
The best way to connect with me, it's very simple. My initials are RB, Randy Brown. RB, and he's a coach. So I'm RB at CoachRB.com. That is the most direct path to me. Send me an email and tell me that you heard the show and follow up with any questions or any inquiries that you might have. But rather than sending people to social media or this or that, I just say RB, Coach RB. It'll get to me, and we'd be thrilled to hear from anybody and everybody from the show. And thank you so much for this opportunity. And I believe in dropping seeds, Dr. Rowe, and I know that every time that I'm on a podcast and every time I hear a podcast, that there are little nuggets that can be taken into people's lives, into their memory, that they might not use in this moment, but they're going to use it down the road. And I think that's what's so great about podcasters and what you do is you are a seed planter and you drop seeds every day. And those seeds, you won't even know it, but you're saving lives, you're changing lives because you're dropping these seeds, and people they're going to take that seed, they're going to bury it, they're going to take care of it, nurture it, and it's going to grow, and it's going to be an incredible part of their life, and you don't even know it. So keep doing what you're doing. Thank you so much.
Well, I received that openly and wholeheartedly, so thank you. Thank you so much. Well, I was going to ask if you have any last words of encouragement for the listeners, but you gave me some words of encouragement for me.
That's right. Well, yeah, my parting shot is this. When it gets really, really difficult, we have a choice. We can quit, sit, or get. We know what quit is. Sit means we're going to continue with life, but we're going to be a shell of ourselves because we're just going to sit and have our pity party. But the get part is you go get whatever you want. You get what you find a life that you want out there in the throes of adversity, and you go get it. And for me, I went like in basketball, if you need the ball, you got to go rebound it. I went and got a rebound, and I rebounded forward, and it's made all the difference in my life. So let's go get. That's what I say.
So we're either going to quit, sit, or get, but we're going to go get. We're going to hustle. We're going to hustle after that ball.
That's right. Let's go get it. Get what you want.
I love it. Well, Randy, I appreciate your message of hope and transformation. I wish you and your family nothing but blessings and abundance. Please take care.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rowe.
Coach Randy Brown, everyone. Be sure to join me next time for more uplifting stories and insights on resilience. Until then, keep pushing forward, embrace the journey, and remember that every setback can lead to a greater comeback. Dr. Rowe, signing off.